Greetings and welcome. We are in 303 and we turn now back to Mr. Conrad's Unstoppable Volume, page 80, Lesson 2 for Crabs in a Bucket. Let's go ahead and we're working in our journals quickly. Let's jot down really quickly a couple of the focus that we want for this one. Let's write this one down. Some people lift you up. Some people let you down. Write that down. That's a significant. Some people lift you up. Some people let you down. Go ahead and write that one down. The other thing that I want to say is we use this word metaphor. M-E-T-A-P-H-O-R. Metaphor. It simply means a word picture. And here we are going to meet one of Mr. Conrad's favorite word pictures, crabs in a bucket. Let's read together. Peer pressure. I hope you're reading with me. Peer pressure is a powerful force to be reckoned with, especially when you're a teenager. Almost all of my students have been affected by it, which is one of the reasons this story is among their favorites. Although short in length, it's long on lesson. One day, Tommy was walking to school. He met several of his friends along the way. They suggested to him that he skip school and hang out with them at the beach. Tommy knew he should go to school, but his friends easily convinced him to go with them. Tommy had a blast that day until he got home. When he walked in the house, his parents were in tears. Tommy's mom had gone to school to give him his lunch, which he had forgotten. When his teachers and mother couldn't find him, they called the police. Tommy's parents searched for him all day. His dad missed work. Now his parents were grateful he was alive, but when Tommy told them what he had done, he was thinking he was dead, or at least in deep trouble. When Tommy's grandfather, Henry, got wind of the incident, he knew the time was perfect to take his grandson crabbing. Two observations really quickly for your journals. One is, notice in Unstoppable how often an older person will teach a younger person. We're back to that Daedalus Icarus story, aren't we? Daedalus the father telling Icarus the son, don't fly too close to the sun. Number two, crabbing, for those of us who don't know, is a way that you catch crabs from under the bottom of the ocean, under the water, okay? You send down a basket and you catch crabs this way. Some of you have maybe been to a seafood restaurant like Red Lobster and eaten crab. Some of you maybe enjoy the cuisine. It's very difficult to catch crab. You got to kind of know what you're doing, and this is the story now. Tommy always wanted to go, but his grandfather thought he was too young. Henry knew there was a valuable lesson to be learned from the crabs, and Tommy needed to learn it. They would go on Saturday. Tommy was wide-eyed with excitement as he ran down the rickety-weathered dock, jumped into his grandfather's creaky wooden boat, and then sat and watched his grandfather row out into the bay. Tommy listened to the rhythm of the oars squeaking in the oarlocks. He could smell the ocean in the gentle sea breeze and almost taste the salt. He observed intently as his grandpa showed him how to tie the bait on his string. Together they dropped their lines into the bay. The weight will take the bait to the bottom, Grandpa explained. That's where the crabs will eat it. Watch your line. Magically, within minutes, Tommy saw his line twitching. You got one, Grandpa yelled. Pull him in. As Tommy hauled in his hand line, Grandpa got the net ready. Not too fast or he'll let go, he instructed. With the crab several feet below the surface, Henry netted him. Tommy took the lid off the bucket and Grandpa dropped the crab in. Immediately, Henry put the lid back on. On this sunny day, the crabbing was good, really good. They both caught a bunch. Eventually, Tommy noticed that Grandpa had forgotten to put the lid back on the bucket. Grandpa, when there was only one crab, you put the lid on the bucket. Now that the bucket's half full, you don't use the lid anymore. Why? Tommy asked. Because one crab can climb out of the bucket, explained Henry. Well, why can't they climb out now? Asked a confused Tommy. At long last, this was the moment Grandpa had waited for. The lesson of the crabs. Watch the crabs, Henry said. Tommy marveled at all the crabs in the bucket. There were so many he couldn't see the bottom. Watching closely, he noticed something intriguing. When one of the crabs would make it to the top of the bucket, another one would reach up and pull it back down. Over and over, Tommy witnessed the crabs getting pulled back down into the bucket. Why do they do that? He asked his grandfather. All of the crabs want out of the bucket, Henry began. In their attempt to get out, they unknowingly pull the others back in. Still watching closely, Tommy saw it was true. Tommy, sometimes our friends can be just like those crabs, Grandpa explained. They may feel they're trapped in their bucket or a situation with no way out. The last thing they want to see is you getting out of the bucket. Misery loves company, Tommy. It hit Tommy like a ton of bricks. Now he realized he had gotten pulled down in the bucket the day he skipped school. He made a vow to himself and his grandfather he'd never happen again. As Grandpa wrote back to the dock, Tommy watched as one of the crabs got out of the bucket. It scurried about on the floor of the boat, and Grandpa reached down and picked him up. Tommy watched as Grandpa seemed to look the crab right in the eyes, and he was nodding his head as he tossed the crab back into the bay. Grandpa turned to a stunned Tommy and said, "He deserved it. He got out of the bucket." All the crabs that remained in the bucket got thrown into a boiling pot of water and they were eaten. That's exactly what happened to one of my students, Don Smith. Only he's not called Don Smith anymore. He's referred to as 63934. And then, of course, the follow-up comment, don't let the crabs pull you down. Get out of the bucket so you can become the unstoppable you. Let's make a couple of quick observations really quickly. I remember a student of mine who, he tried this. He actually was sitting with his pals. They were out in the Badlands. They were having a good time partying. And he turned to his pals and he said, "You know, I think I've decided I'm going to go to college." And one of them started laughing. Started laughing at him. And he's like, "Dude, what are you laughing about?" He goes, "Dude, you're never going to college." And he goes, "No, I'm serious. I'm going to college." He's telling the story the next day and he says, at school, and in room 303, and he says, "I started getting mad because more of my pals started laughing, and then all of a sudden I was like, dude, I'm serious about this. I really am going to college." And one of his pals said, "Dude, who in your family has ever gone to college? Name one person." And he said, None. He goes, "Dude, you'll never go to college." And it hit him. Why? All of his pals were saying this to him. Because they themselves were too afraid to admit they didn't think they could go to college. And so the last thing they wanted was to see him successful. Like crabs in a bucket. It's interesting how sometimes parents, sometimes friends, in fact that same student's parent showed up at parent-teacher conferences and said, "Why are you telling my son to go to college?" I said, "I didn't tell your son to do anything." No, he came home and said he was going to college. I said, "That wasn't me, that was your son. My son's not going to college. He can't do it, he doesn't have the mind to do it, he doesn't have the ability to do it, we ain't got the money to do it." It's interesting, even sometimes parents can pull, right, their son or daughter down. Sad, but true. Let's concentrate just for a moment before we finish here. A time, this one's a sad question, but we got to ask it. A time you pulled somebody down into the bucket. This is an interesting question. A time you pulled somebody down into the bucket. And why? The question Tommy asks is why? Why do they do this? Of course, you know, is it a jealousy? An envy? Maybe we don't want somebody to do better than us? How about this one? A time that you were pulled into the bucket. This often is a little bit easier for us. And why didn't you fight? This is a fair question. Why didn't you fight to get out of the bucket? Right. Of course, there is another question. A time somebody helped you get out of the bucket. There are people in our lives who challenge us to get out of the bucket and not be stuck in there with all the other crabs. Those are important people in our lives. It occurs to me now to suggest to you, if you have one of those people in your life, don't you think you owe it to them to say thank you before you graduate? I have seniors who would not graduate if it wasn't for somebody who pulled them out the bucket and said, "You can do it." Question, have you thanked those people? I mean, really thanked them. Walked up to them and said, "I need you to hear what I'm about to say to you. Thank you." Shake their hand. Say, "You mean a lot to me because you helped me get out of the bucket." They may not understand the word picture until you explain it. Of course, the goal here is simple. Fight for your dreams. Fight to get out of the bucket. And of course, help others as well to get out of the bucket, right? Once you've escaped the bucket, it's easier to be able to tell people, "Look, I know you can do it if you just keep working at it," right? Well, there you go. Lesson 24, a famous word picture of Mr. Conrad's. Thank you.